Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Thatcher and Darren Doctorman, the Weirded Beardos.
Well, welcome back.
Hey,
We are the Weirded Beardos.
I bring the beard, he brings the weird, or wherever you are.
Something like that. Across from me is the great and powerful Kirk R. Thatcher.
Inimitable.
Yeah.
Thank you. And across from me is the delightfully clever, smart, amazing, geniusistic. It's a word I made up. It makes sense. Dr. Darren Doctorman.
Welcome back. This is officially the start of our second season.
It's a second season, so there's going to be all new characters, a much better story arc, and introduce an adorable dog.
And we're bringing in a younger cousin to
cousin Skippy,
to appeal to the group that we do not have, which are younger people listening to
those
it.
young people of today.
Of course, that's just about everybody at this point.
And he's in a band.
Oh yeah, he totally is.
He's in one of those rock bands playing that music that you kids love.
He's our equivalent of Poochie. From
to the max, yeah. All right, enough nonsense. Let's get into the nonsense.
Well, we will get into the nonsense because we have a guest.
Yes.
And he comes from my my past and other people's past as well. His name is Van Ling, and he's the second person I actually became friends with when I went to USC in 1985. And we became fast friends. We realized that we were both geeks. And he was a couple years my senior. So he's incredibly old now. He's almost as old as Kirk.
What's that now? You say he's quite Kirk?
And it's really great to have him here because
I've never met him.
Yeah, but you had heard of him. And
I've heard of him forever. He's one of those names that was thrown around probably since the early 90s. People are like, well, you know Van. I'm like, I don't know Van. Yeah, Van Ling, Van at the Ranch, and yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know him. He knows a ton of my friends. So it was a name that's fine. And I'm meeting him virtually.
Which means that he was avoiding you.
Yeah, well, he's a smart fellow, obviously.
Well, yeah. I wasn't so lucky. So let's just put that way. But interestingly enough, the first time I heard your name was Van mentioning you.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Van. Bring him on so I can thank him personally.
We're going to bring him on. Let's bring him on.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause that no one else can hear for Van Ling.
And
I knew he was going to do that.
Yeah.
Hey there.
You're
nice
not
to meet you.
You're not the puppet, Van. Come out from behind the puppet.
Man,
all right.
Doing the Muppet entrance.
Yeah. Oh, waka.
All right. Goodness.
Now I know why people say I should have met you.
That's right.
I was scared to meet you, actually, Kirk, because all I could see was the mean punk, and not a fan of that type of music. And I've run into enough punks in my life to say, I gotta stay away from that.
Yeah, well, you did a good job. It's only been like 30,
nearly 40 years.
Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah, 40 years, 39 years.
But as I was saying before we brought Van on. The first time I heard the name Kirk Thatcher was from you, Van.
Really?
I think
was it an expletive in front of it, or
no. It was after Trek 4, obviously, and I think it was around the time that Kirk was working on Dinosaurs, and you mentioned his name as this guy who was in Trek 4 and who worked for Henson. And was developing the Dinosaurs show. And I don't know if you remember that. I remember it because that's
You probably You
But
might have heard about me from Lou Zuderman.
anything's possible. I mostly knew you from Star Trek 4 because I'm always interested in looking at credits and saying, oh, there's names that are in there more than once, and that usually means they're either multi-talented, were an assistant that needed that begged their way into a cameo, or any one of those other interesting ways to get into movies.
Had dirt on everybody, yeah.
Yeah, hey, it works.
You know Lou Zuderman, right?
I know Lou. I'm actually friends with Brooke Breton.
Yeah, so but between the two of them, and Lou built the miniature houses for dinosaurs. So that might have been the connection because he and I've been.
Well, I don't.
Possible.
I don't think either you or Ivan had met Lou by that point. That was
yeah,
it was like 90,
so I don't think we'd been in contact with anyone yet. I mean, you knew more people at the time.
I met Lou through Bob Burns. So and I didn't meet Bob Burns for a while, and all I can think of is I don't know. Anything's possible, frankly. I mean,
anyway, it's nice to finally meet you.
Likewise.
Well, it's like I said, I'm glad to have you here because you are the second person that I became friends with at USC,
and the last.
Well, no, there was a couple more.
Yeah,
you didn't sour my opinion on SC students, although it should have. But
yes, indeed, we tried hard.
We met in this crazy class.
Yep.
That was taught by a guy named Leon Roth.
Have you told him this story before, or are you?
I might have said it somewhere.
All right, go for it. I'd like to hear your side of the story.
There's a class that was offered every semester called Art and Industry of the Motion Picture, and every semester they would feature a different new movie that had just come out. And Leon, who was an old executive from I believe the Mirish Company and Seven Arts, he knew everybody, and so he would bring in members of the crew from these films, like the department heads and everything. And the semester that I took this was my first semester at USC. And I think Van's last semester at USC.
Actually, no, it was my third year.
Oh, okay. Right, so you had one more year after that.
Yeah. Yes.
But the movie that they had was Back to the Future. And we had both seen the film dozens of times by that time. And we showed up to this class. It was fascinating. He had big wigs from the film in every week, and I still have the cassettes of when I recorded the classes. But so we got to meet a bunch of people, and among them was the composer. You remember who that was, Kirk?
I didn't work on the movie. I didn't care.
Not a soundtrack fan, I guess. Fair enough.
If it's good. Yeah, I don't.
His name was Alan Silvestri.
I was going to say Alan Silvestri, but I was like, I'm probably wrong. Okay.
And his name is still Alan Silvestri.
Yeah, those parents are great crowd.
And what they did in the class was they ran a section of the movie without, I think they just turned down the volume.
Okay,
because they didn't have distinct DM&Es.
This was actually Alan's specific demo, was to take the clock tower reel and run it silent. He wanted to run it without music, but they didn't have DM&Es in those days available, knowing that the students probably rip them off. So they kept they just had a reel. They brought in reel, whatever it is, 7, 6, something like that. Yeah. And just ran it without
next to the last reel of the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And
they played it silent.
They played it silent to show how a movie worked specifically without music. Well, Van and I sort of didn't let them get away with that. And at one point we started singing the music during during the screening, and
a cappella,
yeah,
because we knew the movie so well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think to some extent Alan Silvestri was a little pissed off, but also a little impressed
Flattered.
and
Yeah,
startled.
You knew exactly where the cues were. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. But at that moment, Van and I, sort of locked eyes across a crowded room, and it was a lovely moment. It was a lovely moment, and
A lifelong friendship was forged.
yeah, sort of, kind
Nice.
of, yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is, it was because it was a film class. It actually didn't start with us. We were the guys who came in second. The first guys came in. A couple of them, tried to lip sync a line here or there. No, we can't change the space time. The whole,
Right.
a couple things. You got a couple laughs in the audience, and then somebody, because they had no music, somebody started doing Ride of the Valkyries. Do you remember that? Somebody started with da, 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 and then you and I separately both said, "That's not right.
That's not how
This
it goes."
is the cue. This is how it goes." Exactly. And we both started doing this, and that's the first time I've ever found a friendship that way. It was so weird because it was spontaneous.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I learned after that, but still, he's.
Do you remember the cue? Can you do the cue now?
Oh yeah, probably.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was Doc Brown climbing on the clock tower.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were doing this, and it was really wild. I had actually been a Silvestri fan for a while, since one of my favorite scores that had never come out, and as far as I can tell, still hasn't officially come out. Maybe it has now, but was "Romancing the Stone."
Oh yeah.
And I love that score, and I could never find it anywhere. And because this was the mid '80s, the movies had just come out. They weren't putting out soundtracks unless they were really big,
right. This was
big movies, and there was no YouTube. There was no way to find any of this stuff, so it was really sad. I'd be going out. I'd go out and find. Oh, there is a track of Romancing the Stone that you can find on on a 45 or something, and I'd go and I'd get it, and I realized, oh shoot, it's Eddie Grant. It's the song that had nothing to, it just had the title, had nothing to do with the movie or the score, so it was a real bummer. So the fact that we got to meet Alan,
and you really got in there. You connected with him, and then he sent you a bunch of his.
Well, yeah, I went up to him afterwards, at the end of the session, and with the bravado of somebody who's not in the business yet, and told him I was a big fan and everything. And to his credit, he, I kept asking, are they ever going to release Romance of the Stone on CD? I'd really love to have it and everything. And he said, why don't you give me your address? And he sent me your address. Yeah, he sent me a box of the tapes that he sends out for demos to filmmakers.
Wow.
And it was a box of like Summer Rental and American Anthem and Back to the Future and Romancing the Stone and
Predator,
Overboard and Predator, and they were the full scores, all the cues. So it was like having and they were on cassette. They were on cassette tape, but it was phenomenal. And it was crazy. And then what was it? A couple years later, that was 85. I met him again in 88 in Gaffney, South Carolina, because I was sitting in on a meeting with him and Jim at, I think it was a Shoney's.
Yeah, Shoney's on the main drag.
Yeah, in Gaffney, South Carolina, because he was going to be doing The Abyss.
Oh wow!
So
in the shadow of the giant peachoid.
Yes. So
we'll get to that.
Yes, we will.
So, Van, you started. Well, tell us about your career, because I just know of you kind of more in the '90s and later, Band from the Ranch days. But early on,
nothing really happened after that. But the point is that I I got into SC Film School and was doing my first year and a half, 2 years, doing gen ed with this weird kind of honors general ed program at USC called Thematic Option. Shot a crazy little montage film for them, and then went into film school, and which really kind of started. We would take the non special courses, the non actual filmmaking courses. We take a lot of the film history courses in the first couple of years, and so we do a lot of that, learn about international films and American films and histories and all that kind of stuff, which is great. They never had a class on visual effects or special effects. I was really bummed about that. They kept listing one on the syllabus, but it never actually happened until probably after I left.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we just were going through film school and met a couple of great friends. Most of them in years after me. Darren was after me. Ed Marsh was after me, and they were. Ed was a year after me in the classes and all that kind of stuff. But we all met each other. Well, Ed and I met each other through an honors program we were both in called Trustee Scholars, and Darren I met, as you can tell, from this class in 1985, but we became really fast friends. And it turns out he lived around the corner at a different apartment, and we sat down and who tasked us to build Elias?
I think that was Bob Duche.
Okay, Bob Duche, who one of our classmates, who went on to become a top editor for
and producer
and now producer, yeah.
With
I
remember his name.
When you said build Elias,
Steve Summers.
Yeah, Steve Summers.
Oh, let's do Summer stuff. But wait, so build Elias, I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
we'll tell you.
We'll get to that.
There's this class. Is it?
It was
not 475.
It was 475. I never took the class. So.
Yeah, me either. It's a directing class.
Yes.
That you would take a scene from an existing IP, and you would direct it. And
your own way, though, not shot for shot. You would.
Well, however you wanted to direct it.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, I seem to recall they weren't allowing you to just choose your own scene from a movie. Sometimes they were giving you
an assignment.
Scenes written by students in previous years.
Okay.
But I mean, I that's a whole separate story. But in this particular instance, I don't remember who was. They wanted it to look like it was an art installation, so it was right. It was and the movie that had just come out recently that I think we all enjoyed was a movie called Platoon. Mm-hmm. And if you remember the famous, not only the famous scene that ended up becoming the poster for that movie,
right,
was a shot of Willem Dafoe,
with
his hands thrown up on his knees, getting shot.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I don't know whose idea it was.
I don't know whose idea it was either. It's probably yours.
We were asked to make a kind of a sculpture of that statue, of that as a statue.
You're right.
And I ended up life size.
Wow.
I ended up drawing up the thing as a series of cross sections that you could cut in foam core, stick together, and then we would cover it with the covering material of choice for starving students, which was aluminum foil. Was it?
Oh, okay.
Wasn't it?
Aluminum foil and saran wrap.
And saran wrap, because we were splurging on this one.
That's right.
So we ended up making this thing, and while we were for whatever reason, we were doing it in Darren's apartment, cutting the foam core and making this thing, and putting these things together, and we were just talking, and we just realized that we had so much in common in terms of just really weird. Oh, do you remember this show? Oh, I love that show. And we would quote things, and we both had that unnaturally geeky knowledge. Memory of a lot of these things. And so even though he was, he's 2 years younger than I am, I was, probably held back too many times. But so I knew it's basically same generation. So we had all this stuff in common. It was great. We could talk about all this stuff. Most of the people in film school are like, oh, well, we're going to talk about Fellini and Bergman,
Yeah.
and we're talking about, Tales of the Gold Monkey or Bring
Irwin
Them Back
Allen,
Alive.
Ray Harryhausen and Irwin Allen. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. So it was great. The closest to that kind of experience on a faculty level I ran into was in one of our history criticism ones that was taught by a gentleman named Rick Jewell. He taught the history of the American film. Really nice guy. But, it was always about, Out of the Past and Meet Me in St. Louis and all these great classics and stuff. And nothing like the kind of weird, geeky sci-fi fantasy, stuff that I was interested in. And I remember, we have to write a paper every, a couple times a semester. And so I turned in my proposal for the paper I wanted to write, and it was going to be about Willis O'Brien.
Yeah.
Because I'd say, well, at least, I'm trying to be. I hope he doesn't mind. I hope he's not offended that I'm not writing about,
I hope it's
John
old
Ford.
enough for him to know it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I can't choose, Star Wars. So I'm terrified to go in because he has a meeting with every student about their proposal for their essay. And I go in there and he's turned away from me and he's got this giant poster of King Kong on his wall behind his desk. And he turns around, in that classic way with the swivel chair and says, "So you want to write a paper about Willis O'Brien?" And it was just like, whew. And so it was like, you know what? It's okay to like popular movies, and yes, they can be classics. Yes, they can not be classics, but you can learn from all of them. Absolutely. And it was one of those things where a lot of film history criticism classes tend to be very, French New Wave in their attitude.
Very arty, yeah.
Very arty, and there's a lot of students that come out very arty. And at USC is the least arty of the film schools that are out there. NYU, UCLA, they tend to be more like this. They turn out those.
They even tell you.
Yeah.
They even tell you, USC, because I looked at both schools. I couldn't afford SC, but they're like, we turn you into a filmmaker and get a job in the film business. UCLA is like, we're not US. I mean, they're proud of it. Like,
you're going to be working at Criterion if you're lucky.
Well, it's like you're going to make art. You're going to do your own thing.
Yeah.
We're not teaching you how to be a Hollywood, cog in that system. You could be a filmmaker and make art. And so, you kind of had to pick and choose. But
yeah. So it was it was an interesting time, and meeting folks like Darren and Ed and a whole bunch of people was a great thing because we all kind of had a similar sense. I mean, some of us were a little more arty than others. Some of us were, even geekier. Though I can't think of anyone geekier. Yeah. So we ended up bonding in film school and stuff. And what was interesting to me was Darren wasn't even in the film school. He was like the guy who snuck in, didn't make it in, but just pretended he was part of it, and he became part of it.
Yeah.
So, and he's the guy who pissed us all off by making us think, wait, we didn't have to pay $35,000 a year and we could get the same education
by osmosis. Yeah.
Just by osmosis. And
I didn't get the same education, to be honest. But that just means that I didn't learn a whole bunch of other stuff that was completely irrelevant by the time I would have graduated.
One of my first jobs out of the thing was to be a PA on a real motion picture that was doing reshoots in LA the summer I graduated, 1986. And part of that process was because they were like doing, for whatever reason, they were doing some reshoots of elements of, background character elements with sound, and they didn't have a boom op, somebody to record. Yeah. So they let me do that because, oh, you're in film school, right? You know that you supposedly know this stuff here. You can hold the boom. We're recording.
Boom operator.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait,
And
what was the movie? Don't leave us
I'll
hanging.
get to that. I'll get to that. He's
hiding it. There's a reason.
One of the things the guys who were shooting that unit said to me is, "Oh, you went to film school, huh? How many years? 4? Okay. So it's going to take you 4 years to unlearn everything before we'll let you do anything." Because they were all like union guys, and the film. I'll have to preface this by giving the names of some of the people in it that I got to rub elbows with.
Okay.
James Earl Jones was, and I met him on the set, in costume and everything. Sharon Stone, Henry Silva,
wow,
and Richard Chamberlain.
Okay, wow. That's an amazing
He's
cast.
blanking. He's blanking.
I have no idea.
You should be glad you're blanking. The film was Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold.
Oh my God. I think I watched about half an hour of it because I'd heard about it, I'd never seen it. And it was
you never got to
Globus or Dino De La was that kind of size film, right? Or that
Cannon
Films. It was Cannon Golden Globus.
Globus, yeah. And it was the reshoot because they completely rewrote the ending because they decided, since it was basically a couple of years after Temple of Doom, they needed to get more indie-ish, and so they rewrote the entire ending because the original ending just had lightning. I think it had a lightning strike some tower because they were using the gold to build some kind of temple to the gods, and the lightning struck it and it melted the gold, and the gold fell on Henry Silva and turned him into a statue. And
Silva and gold.
Yeah, as they said, lacked luster.
Oh my!
So they decided to do a reshoot. They brought back, all the folks.
Wow.
Henry Silva was the bad guy.
Oh.
Obviously,
it was Sharon Stone's first movie. Yeah.
Second
movie.
Oh,
this was after King Solomon's Mines, which was the first one, which I guess was enough of a hit that they did the second one. Which
King Solomon's Mines actually isn't very awful, believe it or not. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I particularly like the Jerry Goldsmith score. I remember finding it on tape and playing it over and over. Anyway, so we also that's the other thing, we were able to bond over soundtracks.
Yeah,
that was something, and that's what we found out on the first day at the Back to the Future class. The interesting thing about the Back to the Future class was that I got to pay it forward because after I graduated in 1991, I brought Terminator 2 to the same class with Leon Roth. And so instead of being the student, I got to be one of the, not just the guests, but the coordinator of all the people from the show who could come and speak.
Oh, I'm glad you brought other people. I was thinking that you were all the guests.
Yeah, I may have that many personalities hidden away, but no, I don't do that. But it just, to me, it felt like paying back.
So you were boom operator on that's what you did on the entire reshoot, and was it like 2 weeks?
No, not at all. The entire reshoot was done. They had a second unit for the reshoot that was just shooting blue screen elements.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I was doing the stuff for, and it was like a bunch of African Americans dressed up as natives, sitting in a canoe for elements of them being sucked into a whirlpool, and having to.
You became an effects expert
and spout culturally insensitive gibberish in the process, and that was back in the day because James Earl Jones played the leader of this tribe, this African tribe. He was wearing like what could only be described as a slightly more regal Fred Flintstone costume.
Oh, Jesus.
And he played a character named Slopagus.
Oh my God.
I am not kidding. It was really wild to be hearing the voice of Darth Vader.
Right.
And roots and all this coming out of this gentleman sitting with his sneakers in this outfit in a director's chair. outside. So, but it just goes to show, and luckily that wasn't the only time I had a chance to talk with James Earl Jones, which I can get to later on. But it was an interesting start, and so that's kind of where I started in the summer of 1986.
You were just helping do whatever. Okay.
I was just PAing one of the guys who was working on that second unit shoot, because they needed to shoot blue screen elements of a bunch of bats flying through, and so they had a couple of mechanical bats on wires that would be able to flap their wings, that they were shooting as the blue screen, and that was being run by the guy who built them, was a guy named Isidore Raponi.
Oh yeah, Carlo Rambaldi's guy.
Who worked for Carlo Rambaldi on ET. So we talked about stuff, and he had just done, I think, Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend, and another grand hit. And so the idea was, you come out of film school, if you're lucky, you start on some low budget stuff.
Yeah.
Doing PA work, and then maybe you move your way up. And that was a very strange process. It was only a 2-week shoot. So, and what's really funny was that I ran into a guy who was working on that shoot, who was my best friend from first grade.
Wow. And
he had dropped out, never went to college, and now he was working as a crew guy. He was a grip, I think, on in the movie business. And so it's like, on one hand, I go to USC Film School, we pay all this money and spend 4 years and everything, and he kind of just said, I'm just gonna go work in the film business, and a completely different path. I had not seen him since first and second grade.
Wow.
And we met again, and it was wild. And so it was like, oh, there was another way to do this that didn't cost as much. Well, I guess I'll live and learn. And what it came down to is you just got to do it. If you want to do stuff, you got to do it. Even if you're doing it for yourself in your home, practicing stuff, whether you're shooting, I shot a lot of regular 8 films before I shot Super 8. I had my dad's triple lens Revere 8 regular 8mm film, where they had cartridges that had 16mm film in it, because regular 8 is 16mm field split. And it was a cartridge that's 25 feet of film. You run it, you turn it over when it stops, and it's shot on either side of And so I shot a lot of little stop motion films, a lot of stupid ideas, just mostly trying to recreate visual effects stuff, special effects stuff that I'd seen we all did. Yeah. And that's one of the things that kind of started it for me. And so, I went through that path, was just kind of a geek my whole life with, Star Trek. The original Star Trek is still the only thing for me when it comes to that. I'll make allowances for the animated series, because that was a big deal at the time. Oh my God, they got the whole original cast and some of the writers back to do a cartoon version with limited animation.
And they had aliens that weren't just bald guys painted blue. Like, that's what made me go like, wow, finally, like Star Wars level aliens.
Although I still haven't, and maybe because I haven't watched a lot of the more recent Trek series, I've never seen a depiction of Lieutenant Eric's.
No, somebody did a CG.
We had one in New Voyages.
Oh,
right.
He was in one shot, and we did.
Oh, okay. Was it CG? Because I'd seen pictures of somebody. Yeah, so I'd seen pictures of that. Yeah, I was surprised. Even in what is it, Below Decks or something, or Lower Decks, they didn't do it because it's animated. Yeah, I wish they had, because you could do a great job with them now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did bats with Izzy.
We did bats with Izzy.
So how did you get you're an effects guy? Like, where did that turn into that?
While I was always an effects guy. I was always interested in this stuff. Didn't know how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. The industry recognized you as such.
You had a detour there.
Yeah. They still haven't. The truth of the matter is, one of the weird things that happened during that same summer, where I spent 2 weeks on Alan Quatermain, I ended up getting a job at ShowScan, Doug Trumbull's company, in their marketing department. which was really interesting. Which means I wasn't working with Doug.
Right.
Turns out that one of his producer, Peter Beal's assistants, turned out to be my former best friend from high school, who went to UCLA, the rival school, and he had a job as assistant to the producer over there. I found this out after I got the gig. I have no idea. I can't even remember how I got the gig, but I was working in the marketing department and just kind of having fun driving down to Culver City every day and being able to it was an internship, so I wasn't getting paid. Because that's another thing you get coming out of film school is, we'll give you chances to, to get experience.
Exactly.
So, because, I don't have any experience picking up coffee. But I met some interesting folks down there, and because I was a geek, I would be doing weird things, and they had a drawer that was locked that had all the reviews of Brainstorm in it that nobody's supposed to ever show Doug. And I met him once or twice back then. But while I was doing that, I was constantly looking, we got to see ShowScan. They had a whole setup for ShowScan. And being a film school graduate, the first thing I did after watching it all is I wrote up a long paper with the pros and cons of what worked and what didn't, and had the audacity to kind of hand it over to them. And I don't know if they ever showed it to Doug or not, but it was kind of crazy because you have the audacity of youth and general cluelessness, which generally can work in your favor, but not as much in the film business. I don't know. But there are two other things there was one other thing I wrote up that I stuck on a wall somewhere in the cubicle because I thought it was cute, which was because they were talking about bigger and bigger formats and all that kind of stuff. And I wrote a little kind of one-page joke, what was known as copier lore back then, which are emails these days, but copier lore where people would find something funny, fax it to somebody, photocopy and put it up on the wall in their office, and then it spreads. And I did this one that was kind of very film student geek centric, which was it was an essay about why Super 8 was a better film format than IMAX. And I've been looking for that in my file somewhere. I can't find it. I hope somebody else has it. Because what surprised me was that a year or two later after this whole thing, I'm jumping ahead, I find it posted on the inside of one of our camera rooms on the Abyss.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And it turns out that one of our cameramen divers had worked with Trumbull, saw it, I guess, thought it was funny, made a copy, and then carried it around with him and would post it up.
On.
Was it Pete Romano?
No, it was Pete Romano's crew, but it was I think it was either Wayne Baker or Ned. I'm trying to remember Ned's last name now. Ned Martin, I think. And it was wild because, and I couldn't convince anybody I had written it because I didn't sign it.
Right.
Because I was, afraid of backlash. You'll never work in this town again. You're going to make fun of whatever.
Right.
So I never
work at Gaffney again.
Yeah. Maybe it'll end up on eBay. Who knows? But that was one of the crazy things that happened. And then that summer, I also worked on as a PA on a television series that never got made. It was a documentary infotainment series called Legends of Hollywood.
Oh.
And it was going to be basically, each episode was going to be about a famous Hollywood legend, Lauren Bacall and so on. And they were going to do all the interviews with them if they were alive, people who knew them in that period if they weren't. And it was hosted, and basically all the contacts for all these people came from the host, who was Roddy McDowall.
Yeah.
So I got to work with Roddy on that, and we went through some adventures and, trying to get the thing made. And basically, long story short, the company that was funding it ran out of money, stopped paying everybody, after
Carol as old as
after
time.
weeks of work. And so Roddy, was really kind of obviously pissed off about this, and he had a bunch of us crew that he had grown close to over for dinner one night, and basically said, "Yes, I'm gonna fight these guys about this. Is crazy. Well, we don't have any leverage because they have all the the film masters they shot." And Roddy said, "Unless they don't." And so he enlisted one of the PAs who had keys to the office to help him get into the production office and make off with all the masters, and held them hostage until the crew got paid.
Yeah, he's old. He's old school. I've heard those stories.
Yeah, I mean, he was great, and
so
that was my experience with Roddy
The
McDowell.
PA was codenamed Bright Eyes.
Yeah,
how much did you hound him about Planet of the Apes? Come on.
I asked him what it was like being in the mask and so on, the usual questions, I guess. Yeah. But it was great.
Remember when you were on Planet of the Apes?
Yeah, exactly.
That was great.
That was great. That was awesome. Yeah, I know. We've all been there.
Yeah. So it was really an fascinating experience. So in the middle of this is when that summer of '86 was when Aliens came out. Now, no, I had never heard of James Cameron before Terminator. He, in one of our film classes, the Cinema 466, in 1984, he brought Terminator in as one of the films that was soon to be released, that they screen in this class of what the class does, and then they bring in the filmmaker.
Wow.
And it was really interesting because he wasn't talking all the lofty shit that everybody else was talking about. He would talk about, we had no money, so we had to figure out how to do this and this.
Right.
And he was really open. And it was the kind of thing where it's like, you know what? I kind of think that way about how to do these things. And he talked about the fact that the little Mexican kid at the end of the movie was actually 3 different kids. Wow. Because on a low budget thing, because they only had time to shoot one set of coverage from one angle on him. I think with the over the shoulders with Linda, and then they weren't able to get the rest of it at this gas station that they needed because they ran out of daylight or something, and so they had to shoot an insert thing. And in order to do the inserts, they needed the same shirt back. And because they needed a better actor too, so they didn't ask they weren't able to, they didn't want to bring the kid back. They wanted to bring somebody back for close-ups that could maybe act a little bit better. And so the mother of the original kid was so offended, she refused to give them their shirt back, the shirt, because it was actually the kid's shirt. Right. So they had to figure out how to come up with a shirt that looked the same. And then they ended up dubbing him with a different voice. And so it's 3 kids, with 2 different shirts. And that was a revelation, because oh wow, the same shit we do in film school to just make anything work, they do in a film, and it totally works. Nobody.
He was a Corman graduate, so he knew.
He was a Corman graduate, yeah. And
it's all tricks, yeah.
So it was amazing, and he had done Battle Beyond the Stars, which was another film that I was a huge fan of, and I mean he designed Nell, and had Nell in the office for a little while. Yeah. It was all Bondo. I have no idea who he may have used for a casted model, but it was crazy. Anyway, so I was already a fan of James Cameron after seeing it. I remember sitting in that class, listening to him, and I was saying to myself, if there are any filmmakers I would love to be attached to, it's either going to be Terry Gilliam or James Cameron, because I loved Brazil. Brazil was one of my favorite films. Anyway, that's kind of how I came out of film school. I didn't want to be, any of the other kind of fantastic filmmakers who are out there, who are doing great dramas and great things. I wanted to do things that had a genre bent to them and do good films and work on great films. And that's what those 2 filmmakers represented to me.
Absolutely.
So Aliens comes out in '86. We're all really excited about it. And, it was a watershed moment for me. There were other watershed moments from that year that I remember very clearly while we were in film school. I don't know if you remember the other two major like world events that happened that year.
Well, the Challenger exploded.
Challenger explosion
and Star Trek 4 came out.
And Star Trek 4 came out.
And Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Oh right. Oh right.
Which we were not downwind of, so we were lucky.
Yeah, but still, I remember this stuff happening and sitting in my dorm room going, holy crap, you know. Anyway, so Aliens was going to come out while we were in film school shooting the last thesis project of one of my, you know, colleagues' films. One of them, a guy named Steve Feinberg, who went on to, who was the son of Jane Feinberg of Fenton Feinberg Casting, who went on after graduation to run the Rhode Island Film Office. He had brought in, because I guess they had scripts from his mom, the casting business, for Aliens. And I remember, you know, on these cold nights shooting this student film, we were reading the script for Aliens, and it was great. It was very easy to read. It had an attitude to it. I remember the very first line. It was exterior space. The stars shine cold and remote like the love of God. That's the first line of the script.
It's funny, in the 80s, having friends who were successful screenwriters, writing more prosaic than just straight was very popular. I don't know if it's because with readers or something, because readers kind of ran the biz at that time. Yeah. But I had friends who wrote very funny, again, stuff that was not even translated to the screen. It was stage directions or stuff like that. It was either poetic or funny, or and then it kind of, people got over it because people ended up starting writing novels about it.
If it gives you the ability to set a tone and to carry a mood, then great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I agree, but
so I had read the script and I thought, this is going to be great. I really want to see how well it gets made, how much it gets changed. We all read scripts that then totally got changed when they got made into movies, whether it was studio interference, whether it was production problems, whatever, you know. And so Alien comes out in August of '86, and I went and saw it twice opening day in Westwood.
Yeah.
Darren, did you go to those? I remember Ed being there for the evening screening that I went to.
I think I was at the evening screening.
Yeah. So we went and saw the movie, and it was exactly the script. And it's like, wow, filmmakers can actually make exactly the script, you know. And it was great. It was fantastic. And you know, I had all the Starlog magazines and all that stuff, and we came out, and Ed says to me in the parking lot of the theater, so I know you're geeking out on this stuff. I dare you to build, you know, a power loader, the power loader, because you seem to be geeking out over that thing a lot. And I said, what, like a model or one you wear, or what are you talking about? He goes, no, just a model, because I'm having a party at, you know, I'd already graduated. He was still in his last year. And he basically said, you know, I'm having a party. It's a costume party on Halloween. So, you know, if you want to build your little model and come out to me, I'll bet you can't do it. And because, you know, no better way than to goad somebody into doing something, right? And it was a gentleman's bet.
Right.
So it was just pride at that point. So I go, okay, yeah, I can do that. And so I convinced him I was building a model for the next 2 months. And my model was a 7.5 foot high costume.
I've heard about this story. Yeah.
That story. Yeah. And, you know, there's actually a YouTube video of it that was shot as an Easter egg interview for Charlie de Lauzirika's Alien Quadrilogy DVD set. So you can find it on there, or you can look at it on YouTube.
I think that's where I saw it.
Yeah. So that story is all absolutely true.
That's amazing. And you did it with cardboard and plastic and whatever you could find, or I mean,
yeah, I really didn't know much about foam core back in those days. I was only starting to learn, about that. It was mostly poster board, wood I got at National Lumber, the precursor to Home Depot, hinges, screws, and I was like, oh, well, all these special effects guys and visual effects model makers and stuff, they all go to weird places like, all electronics and places that have little Apex electronics and so on, and find little screws and lights and panels and all this kind of stuff. And I found there these twin rotary screwdriver. It was a screwdriver, so that it came with the little pieces that would go on it. But it was just basically a spiral, metal spiral stick with something that you could try to, maybe put a pulley around it to make it turn. And then these little things that would move on it. And I got a couple of those, and I used it to build actual motion into the claws of this power loader. And I built it with a motor so that the things were, and I went all out in my parents' garage at home, and built this thing on this bet, and didn't tell Ed that's what I was doing. But I ended up having a couple other friends who were helping me out on it, and we finished building it on Halloween Day because I had to bring it to the party that evening. And it was this crazy thing that when I stand in it, it had like stilts, not full stilts like it was like the stilts were like half as high as the real thing, but it still put me up at like 7.5 feet tall. And it had, I could move the arms, and I had switches that could rotate the claws and open and close them, and the little rotating light on top, PVC pipe for basically I went all out. And all I had as reference to build this thing was the photos I could see in Starlog and going to see the movie. So I had very little idea of what like the back of it looked like.
Right.
I knew there were hoses coming out and stuff, but it was like completely an amateur costume. Back in the days when we weren't so stuck on being able to research everything, other than looking at pictures and just building. It was like the Halloween costumes we would do when we were when we were children. It was like, if you don't buy the Spider-Man costume, you want to make your own. Right. How do you do it? You get a sweatshirt and you put some felt on it and you get the right colors, and it's completely inaccurate, but it's close enough to give the feeling. Somewhere between that and complete meticulous geekiness was where this power loader ended up. And while I was building it, one of my friends who was helping me like pack it and try to figure out how we're going to even get it there. We haven't gotten to that stage yet. Said, hey, joked and said, hey, you should show this to Jim Cameron.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, how am I going to do that? Like, well, their offices are on the Fox lot, right? Haven't you been calling them about PA jobs? Or, yeah, I have. But every time it's like, oh, we're not in production on anything yet, so we don't have anything. But thanks, call me next month. Yeah, which is something you never hear.
Right.
And so I called them this time, asked them about jobs. Call next time. I said, oh, one more thing. I built something I want to show you. What's that? A power loader. Dead silence. What? You mean like one you actually wear? Oh yeah, it's a Halloween costume. It's Halloween, isn't it? Dead silence again. Come on down. Here's the address. We'll leave you a pass. We got to see this. So all of a sudden, in the afternoon or the mid-afternoon was when we found this out. And I was like, oh shoot, well, how are we going to figure out how to get it down there? And I had to rent a truck. I had to rent a pickup truck to be able to put this thing. And I built it so it was, you could come apart, the legs could be separate and all that kind of stuff. And we put it in this truck, and my two friends, Ken Mann and it was Larry Herbst, basically helped me. They took the whole afternoon with me. We rode down in the truck down the freeway to get to the Fox lot. The Fox lot and park in. They had bungalows. Jim and Gail and Hurd had bungalows there for Pacific Western Productions, and I park in the parking lot. And we get out and we're assembling me into this thing.
Right.
You know, me in my jeans and T-shirt and everything, and we had a little Halloween bag just to, you know, put in the closet, and they're all staring out the windows, looking through the shades at what's going on out there. And I finish this thing, and I kind of walk over with the thing. Gail Ann Hurd comes out, you know, and says, "This is the best walking resume I've ever seen."
Yeah.
And I'm blown away, obviously, because, you know, I've been reading about them in Starlog. I've been reading the fact that Jim wrote a letter back to Starlog to answer some questions that fans were asking and stuff. It was like crazy. There's like, this guy's kind of like one of us. They're both
Definitely,
genre folks.
Yeah.
And so, and as I was packing up the because I got to get to, you know, Fox sent a photographer over and took a picture of Gail and I, you know, with me in this costume, you know, and then I said, I have to get going. I have a bet to win at a party. And so, you know, because it was getting to the end of the day, Jim was going to be there. He had heard about it from Gail, and he was going to be there, but he had to go off to a meeting, and it took so long for us to get the pickup truck. I missed meeting him. He had to leave. So we packed up the thing, and while we're packing it up, Gail says, "Hang on a second," goes back into her office, comes back out with Sigourney Weaver's jumpsuit and custom Reeboks, and says to me, "You might as well make your costume complete. You kind of look like you're the right size." I was much thinner back then. And just bring it back with all the same stains and everything, because, you know, it's a used costume. We want to keep it in stain. And that blew me away.
Wow.
And so I was able to put that thing on and go to my friend's party.
That's amazing.
Wearing Sigourney Weaver's jumpsuit and Reeboks in this full costume. And the way we did it was we drove the pickup truck up to his apartment. He lived up on the second floor, told him he needed to come down and help Van bring his model up. And we had parked the car, put on the headlights. I put on the costume out in the street. This is at a apartment building on one of the streets just north of Fraternity Row at USC, where we had both lived back at the time. He was still living there because he was still in college. And Ed comes out the door, comes around the corner, and there's me silhouetted, backlit by this thing, you know. And needless to say, I won the bet. Took us 20 minutes to take it apart, to take it up in the elevator to get up to his apartment.
Oh my God.
And so that was the, you know, nice evening where we could rest and then listen to the radio music and find out that there is a costume contest in Glendale at a nightclub called Carnival. And my friends and I looked at each other, you know, Ed, not Ed, because he had a party to host,
right?
But my other two friends, Ken and Larry, and actually Ken couldn't make it at that point. Larry's brother Ron took over. He went on to be an artist at Digital Domain, Ron Herbst. So Larry and Ron basically said, "We'll go with you to this nightclub thing." And so we packed the power loader costume back into the thing and drove to Glendale, parts flying off the freeway again. And we get there and we have to do repairs, and we're out in the parking lot, but we're parked all the way off because I didn't want people to see. I wanted to walk over in it.
Right.
And so we're parked over the far end of the parking lot. It's dark. And Ron would have to run in, pay the admission or use the bathroom in the club, go in there with the hot glue gun, plug it in so it would heat up. When it heated up, he would unplug it and run all the way across the parking lot so that we could get 2 or 3 squeezes out of it to put the pieces back on. So that was an interesting thing. And they were going through all the costumes that, you know, you could hear the thumpy music that they have in the clubs and everything. And I finally get it done. We walk over there and it's like, okay, just go through this door and down those stairs and up these other stairs to get to the stage. And we went through all that stuff, and, you know, me trying to fit this thing through everything. Long story short, I won first prize. It was like $500, which was almost enough to pay for like the truck rental and part of building the thing. So, and we thought, okay, great. That's a great experience. I just graduated from college. I just worked at ShowScan. I worked with Roddy McDowell, and now I've won a bet, a gentleman's bet on a costume contest.
And met Gail and Hurd.
Yeah, and met Gail and Hurd, and now I just have to actually, figure out how I'm going to have a career in this business.
So
am I going to be building? Yeah.
Let's stop there for this first.
It's taken an hour to get 2 years into your career.
So sorry about that.
No, it's great, because if we can all hang on, we can do the next portion and get 2 episodes out of this. Can you do that, Kirk?
Yeah, I just need a break, like a 5 minute. Yeah.
2 for 1. Yeah.
And Van, if you can stay with us, that'd be great.
Yeah,
too.
Of course.
Okay.
Right.
Well, thank you for joining us for this part 1 of Van Ling on the Weirded Beardos.
And the next episode, we'll do 2 more years of his career.
That's right. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
The Weirded Beardos are Kirk Thatcher and Darren Doctorman. Email them at theweirdedbeardos@gmail.com.